Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's top business interviews. My name is Greg Story. I'm the president of Dale Carnegie Training Japan, and my special guest today is David Wouters, the president of InterSearch Japan. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Greg. Well, nice to be with you again.
Yes.
It's been quite a while.
It has, with COVID and everything. So, David, you have been in Japan how many years now altogether?
Well, I came here in 1969.
69.
As an employee of Coca-Cola.
Right.
I was doing the marketing. I was the marketing manager for Southeast Asia.
Right.
And the boss, Mr. Hal Roberts, I think most Americans and foreigners in Japan know Hal Roberts as the boss of Coca-Cola. And he said to me one day, he said, "Dave," he said, "I understand they're shooting at you." Now, this was during the Vietnam War, and once in a while, I had to make a trip to Vietnam and some of the other countries in Southeast Asia. And he said, "How would you like a vacation?" And I said, "A vacation I would love." He said, "Come with me." So that's how it started. I transferred my responsibilities to the Japan operation and have been operating with Coca-Cola for a long time. I retired, and a couple years ago, guess what?
What happened?
The people from Coca-Cola came to me and said, "David, we want you. We want you to do some marketing for us." So I got involved again, and I have held the position of manager for the vending machine requirements that the Coca-Cola company has with the commercial market.
That's even continuing today, still.
That's continuing today.
So how many years is the association with Coca-Cola now then? Oh, thank you.
They came to me. Coke came to me.
But if you count from when you joined Coca-Cola right through to now, you're still helping them with this vending machine thing here. How many years is that altogether?
Well, this has been the second year on my after retirement stint.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So 1970. I don't have the
That's
years.
Right. Rough mid-70s,
yeah.
Was it? It was late 70s?
71, 72.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
so how was it you got to Japan in the first place?
how did I get to Japan in the first place?
Coca-Cola sent you here, or you were already here, or how did that work?
That was a very easy story. I was looking for a job. I had a job that was not substantial, and they interviewed me.
So where were you? You were in the States?
You
were here?
I was in the States.
Oh, you were in the States. Okay, right.
I had been working in Latin America and parts of the Far East.
Right.
But I came to Japan at Japan's request. I went through a training program that they had in the States for approximately 5 or 6 months.
Okay.
And they wanted me thoroughly schooled on their thinking, their philosophy of business, and most of all, selling Coca-Cola.
Of course. Key job. And so when they said, okay, Japan, was that something you said, I want to go to Japan? Or they said, okay, David, please go to Japan? How did that work? Because Coca-Cola is all around the world. You could have been in Europe. You could have been anywhere, right?
That was their decision. I had nothing to do with that. I had been stationed in Bangkok.
I see. Okay.
And I would have to say that our results were pretty good.
Okay.
And that's when Hal Roberts came to me and said,
take a vacation and come to Japan.
They're shooting at you. And actually they were.
Right.
The plane.
Right.
The plane would come in low over Saigon, and they would come in low for a reason, because if they were up higher, they'd be an easy target.
Right.
And I remember the guy I was traveling with said, David, he said, take a look. I said, I hate to look. He said, look, there's holes in the plane.
Oh, my goodness. So Japan, 69, that just must be unbelievably amazing place in 69 when you got here, right? Nothing like today. So your first job in Japan for Coca-Cola was in the marketing area?
Coca-Cola was in the market area with Mr. Roberts,
Right, okay. Yeah. And did you have a marketing team that you were looking after?
Yeah, I had a marketing and sales team here.
So here you are, you've been trained in the States, you've been working in Thailand, you turn up in Japan, now you have to manage a team of Japanese employees for Coca-Cola at that time. What was challenging about that compared to your previous experiences?
Well, I found it very enjoyable and challenging, yes. I mean, we had obstacles, we had the remnants of the war going on. After that, it was not so bad.
Well, when you say fun or not so challenging, I'm not thinking so much about the marketing activity as much as the leading activity, because the theme of this podcast is about leading in Japan. So thinking back to when you first started leading the Japanese team members, what was easy or fun or challenging about that activity?
Well, at the time, in the mid-'70s, I was single.
Okay.
And I met a gal at the American Chamber. And we got on pretty well. And we got married in Japan. So the living portion of my stay here has been, I won't say easy, but it has been very enjoyable and very challenging. And I've had great moments in doing the work here.
So, okay, you're leading a team of Japanese marketers. What was different about leading them, say, to leading a team in Thailand or leading teams in America in terms of the leadership role?
Well, at the time, we had a major concern. The major concern was that the Japanese had a way of marketing and doing sales, performing sales, which is natural. And the Americans and other foreigners that were sent over had their own way. So one of the jobs I had that President Iwamura gave me was to bring the two sides together and develop a program that was truly joint and agreeable to all. So we developed a Coke systemization of training in Japan, and we had to work on various aspects of the way the product was marketed and who did the marketing and the sales. Was it the bottler or was it the Coca-Cola team how can we bring it together so that there is a strong unity of people, Japanese and foreigners.
So you said that the Japanese way that they had was a natural way, and then you had the American system. You have to join them together. What was the Japanese natural way of selling Coca-Cola in Japan?
Natural way. Well, that's a difficult thing to completely define.
What was the Japanese way of doing it?
Yeah, generally the Japanese will stick to relationships that they have within the marketplace to develop the market.
Right.
The American side was disciplined that there has to be a system set in motion which meets the objectives of the Coca-Cola company. Mm-hmm. And that's when I got involved in training. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Iwamura asked me to bring the two sides together.
Right.
He organized the first meeting that we had between the managers on the Japanese side and the American side. My job was to get to the points you exactly talked about. What are you doing? This is the Coke way. We understand that this is Japan, and there are certain modifications that have to be made in the formality and introduction of product and service.
Yep.
So we have to bring that together. And I guess we did a pretty good job at it.
And how about your experience with a Japanese team, in terms of getting engagement, getting people really committed to this joint way of doing things? Was that challenging to get them to say, okay, we're not going to keep doing it the old way, we've got a new way, let's get behind that, or was that relatively easy?
It took a couple years.
I'll bet it is. What was challenging about that?
Well, each side thought they knew best, right?
Right.
And I had to develop the program around a Coke systemization,
right?
Not a Japanese or American way of doing business,
right?
A Coke systemization that would fit the country, the background of the market, and that was sometimes difficult.
A lot of times in Japan, in a situation like that, okay, we're going to have this joint approach. The president says we're going to have a joint approach. You have to work it out. But often the Japanese at the sort of ground level don't follow what the president says.
They follow what they've been educated in and by.
Yeah, they ignore the president. So how do you get those guys to stop ignoring the president and follow the program? How did you do that?
By having meetings and having the people talk to each other.
Right.
And case study programs.
Right.
And we developed the case study methodology.
Right.
And we brought the people together.
Right.
On the Coca-Cola side. And also we brought in the bottlers later on to see that we were working with them.
Right.
Not against them.
So is there some sort of concept, there was like a tension between the Coca-Cola company and the bottling companies? Because I think at that time there would have been regional bottling companies still at that time,
Yeah, there's 17 bottlers.
17 bottlers, right? So 17 bottlers have got their concept of the business, and you've got Coca-Cola over here with their concept of the business, and you've got direct control over the staff in the Coca-Cola company, but no control over the team in the bottlers. So how did you convince those guys to do it?
Very good point. Because the bottlers were independent.
Yep.
They had their own management.
Yep.
They were not a part of the Coca-Cola. They were franchised.
Yep.
That changed later, but they were franchised, and they wanted to do it their own way. So we had to bring them into many of the meetings and discussions we had to show them that we were working with them, that
Right.
we were not trying to oppose them. We understood the Japanese methodology. We also understood the Coke way of doing business, and we had to make it a joint effort. It wasn't easy at the time.
And I
But
guess
I got a lot of cooperation from both sides because they both wanted to be strong.
so. But you're saying that the bottlers wanted to be more successful, and the Coke company obviously wants to be more successful. So their joint vision of success is the same thing, but the way of doing it is the
Like
gap, isn't it?
Going down a highway and said, "Look, we have to turn off here. We can take this one to the left, this one to the right, this one down the middle.
Yep.
What do you want to do?"
Right.
So that was a question at the time, and we had to bring them together with meetings, and I developed a systemization program, which Iwamura-san endorsed, and that was put into place. And every training class that started in the beginning in the spring would have to go through this program.
So this systemization program, did you develop that by yourself, or did you have a team of people helping you to do it?
I had a team.
Right. So how did you pull that team together? Did you get to choose the people? You were assigned the people? How did that work?
Iwamura-san assigned some people to me, asked me who I thought would work well in a joint effort, and to have that team lead the company in their methodology.
Right. And how long did it take to come up with that plan?
The first thing you have to do is study the people and study what they believe in. You have to understand them, and you have to understand their reasoning. That took, I would say, a year and a half, 2 years.
Okay.
Before that was completely understood and utilized as a positive input, because they say, "Who is this foreigner that's coming in here and telling us what to do?"
Exactly.
So I didn't take it. I didn't tell them what to do.
Right.
I found the best way to teach a program like that was find out what they wanted.
Right.
And get to their thinking, and then utilizing their thinking with the other side's thinking through meetings, organizations, sales programs that we developed.
So in that regard, your Japanese probably wasn't 100% fluent at that time, like it is today.
That's an easy question to say yes to.
Yes, and probably their English wasn't probably super fluent either. So you've got probably quite a big language. You've got a concept gap and you've got a language gap. So how did you find working around that?
I remember this very clearly. Hal came to me. He said, "Dave," just used very direct. how you making out? I said, oh, I'm doing fine, Mr. Roberts.
Good answer for the boss, right?
I'm doing fine. I'm learning Japanese now. And he looked at me. He had a sly sense of humor. And he said, David, I didn't bring you to Japan to learn Japanese. I brought you here to sell Coca-Cola. And I laughed, and he laughed. He was a very direct guy.
Yeah. If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. So you found a way. I mean, you've got a group of selected people with probably not perfect English. You've not got perfect Japanese. But how did you explain what for them would have been quite a different concept, quite a different approach? How did you get them to understand? You talk about getting to understand what they were thinking and to meet them there. But to do that, you've got to understand, the communication part of that. It must have been very difficult.
More and more, we got the Japanese involved in communication directly with the U.S. Now, what I did back in the 70s, the early 70s, was develop a recruiting program of young Japanese who were studying in the U.S.
Right.
And along with Namawashi-san, the personnel manager, and there was one other at the time, we went to the States and we put on recruiting programs at the universities.
Wow.
Talking to there was individual potential candidates who were Japanese that were going to graduate and that were going to come back to Japan. We got some very outstanding people. One or two of them became very senior. I think one of them became president of the company later.
That's so interesting because this is back in early 70s, right? So I can't imagine there would have been too many American companies who would have thought to do that. That sounds, to me, very exceptional. Was it exceptional, or was that just other companies were doing that too?
Well, I like to think it was exceptional.
I think it was
because we started it.
Yeah, I think so.
And there was only one or two other companies that were doing it at that time.
Right.
I would say we were the most successful. We had competitors there. I think IBM went there. And there was a kind of informal competition to see who would be on top, Coca-Cola or IBM.
Oh, okay. Totally different industries, but we're competing for the same
people. Sometimes the same people person, right? Competing.
Limited resource of people, because there wouldn't have been that many Japanese, I guess, available in the States. So coming back to your point before about understanding, people talk about they learned to play mahjong to be able to have a communication with the Japanese. Other people say, golf. Other people say golf and mahjong and drinking, going out and getting on the booze together and, having that type of informality. What was your approach to try and really get to understand their way of thinking?
Well, I tried to encourage it. I think probably the most outstanding activity where we got involved with each other was golf.
Golf
as a sport,
right.
And the Japanese love golf, and the Americans love golf, and we'd go out and we'd have tournaments, and we'd compete.
Okay.
And then we had no problems doing that.
So did you compete?
If you make the people that are working with you happy,
Yep.
that's one of the secrets of training.
Right.
If you strictly authorize or direct, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
I had to make both sides want to work together. And sports, to me, was one of the activities that worked best.
And I suppose, too, at that time, like it is today, too, you know, there's a limited amount of space for golf courses. It makes golf an expensive activity. Golf memberships would have been, in those days, I imagine, extremely expensive. So if the company is providing a way for you to play golf at their cost, I mean, for a Japanese employee, that would, I guess, have been a pretty attractive offer.
Yeah, there were some problems. We had to arrange some of these events months in advance.
Right.
Through the management of the club.
Right.
Usually through a member of that club who also worked for Coca-Cola.
Yeah, not so easy.
And I was a member.
You're a member too, okay.
The 300 Club.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Good, okay. I was a member of the massive slice hit to the right into the bushes club for golf when I was playing. But in terms, what about the going out and, you know, dinner and drinks and that type of thing? Was that also a big part of your experience with getting to connect with the Japanese team in those days?
Yes, of course. Favorite Japanese pastime after work is to go out and have a drink. And we'd often have sessions together, usually after a serious meeting that we had on marketing or sales, and someone would suggest, let's go out and have a drink.
Right.
And nobody said no.
Right.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You got to be friendly.
Yep.
You have to appeal to their sense, or everybody's sense of unity. A key to training.
And another thing there with meetings, you know, we talk about Namawashi in Japan, you know, so you have the meetings before the big meeting. And so you're going around and getting everyone who's going to be a stakeholder to discuss with them privately, and or maybe ones and twos, and get them right for the meeting. So when you get to the meeting, it's more of a formality. But what was it like in those days? You know, was it the same then that you had to sort of go around one by one and talk to everybody before the meeting? Or was it more of the American Western style of we get to the meeting, we make the decision in the meeting as opposed to beforehand? What was the situation like then?
I'd say in the beginning it was very formal. And the program would be set up by the president's office. And I had to know what it was, and I had to follow it, so that the president was satisfied and the company got the maximum benefit that they could. As time went on, it became a little bit more informal, where there was more ad-libbing and more spontaneous reactions that could develop. In the beginning, it was formal.
And were you doing Namawashi yourself at that time? Did you understand how Japanese do this Namawashi, this groundwork before the meeting, and they go around and they talk to all the stakeholders and they try to get them on board? So when they get to the meeting, it's like a rubber stamp type of approval. Or were you operating more from the Western point of view of we go to the meeting, we debate in the meeting, we decide in the meeting? Which approach were you trying?
The Namawashi was important. And I had to get to know the bottlers too.
Right.
Of course, I was closer to the Coca-Cola staff and I could work with the Coca-Cola staff because they wanted to win. And that's the other thing.
Right.
Get your side to want to win because they are going to gain in the process.
So how did you, usually when you talk about wanting to win, it's us against the competition. So rather than fighting with each other internally, you direct the vision of winning against Pepsi or against whatever other product was a competitor for Coke in those days. Were you able to do that? Was that how you did that? Or how did you get that sense of winning? Was it more of a personal achievement or against a rival? Or how did you direct them that way?
You had to do it carefully.
Oh, okay. Why is that?
And you had to do it... look, Sato-san, this is a very serious and interesting situation we have. We need your support at the meeting to promote and help us through the various obstacles that we have to overcome. I did it through a sense of cooperation. And that's one thing I wanted to mention to you today. It's a sense of cooperation and getting the people to understand what the results will bring and to try and avoid personal conflicts of interest, which usually was what was in back of the one side or the other's way of thinking. They learned how to work together. And you had to do it in a way that was appreciated. It's the same thing in life. You have to gain appreciation by the way you act or react with other people's and their situations.
And normally, you've got headquarters in Atlanta, in the States. You've got a very American business culture as a predominant culture of Coke. I can imagine that you just talked about it takes 1.5 years, 2 years to get the people to cooperate. I can imagine that someone sitting in Atlanta would be looking at Japan saying, what's that Wouters doing in Japan? Why is he taking so long? He should just get them in a room, bang heads together, and get the Japanese to play ball. I can imagine that there was that type of pressure coming from the headquarters who didn't know Japan, who didn't have an appreciation of how things work here. Did you have that type of issue?
I would say to a certain extent, but because the company was acting together or beginning to act together, that pressure diminished. But the end result was they told me, we want you back in Atlanta and do the same thing for the company in Atlanta.
Really?
So they appreciated it.
Okay.
But you didn't always feel it in the beginning.
No, I'll bet.
We got results.
Yeah. And did you go back to Atlanta and do it there too?
I didn't go back to take a permanent job, no.
No.
I wanted to stay overseas because my degree had been in international business.
Right. Where did you do your degree?
I went to Washington and Lee University.
Right.
Undergraduate, and then I went to graduate school at NYU.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was that the Stern? Was it
Stern School?
Stern School, okay.
Yeah.
Very prestigious university. Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. And so what year did you leave Coca-Cola? What year did you resign from Coca-Cola?
Resigned from Coca-Cola. Oh boy. Okay. 1976.
76, okay. So what happens after you resign from Coca-Cola?
What happened?
Yeah, what did you do after that?
I had a tough life.
Okay, what did you do?
Well, I resigned because I literally didn't want to get assigned back to the U.S.
Okay, all right.
So I started my own business.
What did you do? What was your business?
I was working with people I knew. I used the same, I won't say a skill, but I think it was just naturally that I went to people I knew, and they came to me, and they'd say, look, we got this assignment. Can you do it?
So this assignment, is this a recruiting assignment? Is it a marketing assignment? What is the assignment?
Which assignment?
The one that people are asking you for help with. Are they asking to find people? Are they asking to help with marketing? What is the actual...
Some of them were asking me to work directly for them.
Oh, okay.
So I did. I gave them some time.
Okay, right.
And we worked on a, extended period of time in order to get the job done.
Okay.
Like this.
Yeah.
People from the Coca-Cola
Right.
came to me again,
Yes.
knocked on the door, actually knocked on the door.
Okay.
And they said, is David here? I didn't know the guys.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, I'm David. We want to talk to you.
Okay.
Okay. Go into I didn't know what they were talking about.
Right.
And then they told me.
Okay.
And we know your work with the company and
Right.
how you did it. We want you again.
Wow.
That was a big program at the time.
Right.
It was always quite successful.
What year was that? What year was that?
What year did they come back to me?
Yes.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. So quite a big gap between, 76 and 2 years ago, right? 2019, yeah.
They were doing, by that time, they were doing pretty well.
Yeah.
And then things started to change.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I'm still doing it.
Okay. And this business you started was like a consulting business, marketing business? How would you describe it?
Well, it was consulting. It was a combination of management, marketing,
Okay.
consulting.
Yeah. And you ran that business for how long?
I'm still doing it.
Well, now it's called InterSearch, right? So it's more in recruiting, but
Yeah.
it wasn't called InterSearch then, I guess. I guess it's changed over the years into a different style of business.
Yeah, the style, you mean the style of doing it?
Well, no, in the sense of today, you're mainly, I guess InterSearch is mainly doing recruiting, right?
Yeah, we have a recruiting license.
Right.
I had to
Yeah,
get a recruiting license from the Japanese government.
right.
We're legally licensed
Right,
to do recruiting.
right.
And we had to get a guy who is our accountant, a year of training in order to get licensed.
Right, okay.
Why did I do it? I could do it.
Right. So, if you had to think about companies are sending people to Japan and they don't know Japan and they're going to be running an organization here, leading an organization in Japan, if you had to think about some advice that you would give them to help them be a successful leader in Japan, what advice would that be?
What is what?
What would be the advice you'd give new people to Japan to be successful as a leader in Japan?
all the things that I mentioned to you.
Yeah. Well, let's think about three. Say, let's pick three, 1, 2, 3 type of thing. What would it
Number
be?
one.
Yep.
Number one.
Yep.
Understand the culture
Right.
and the people.
Do you need to learn the language?
That's number one.
For that purpose, do you need to speak Japanese? Should they study Japanese or don't worry about it?
No, I know a number of people. Yeah, it certainly helps.
Right.
And that's one thing I was not strong at.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say that I followed Hal Roberts' advice, but I learned my languages early on. I find that learning language, you have to do it early on in life. I learned Spanish.
Okay.
Se habla español.
Okay.
5 años, alto escuela de la universidad, etc., etc.
Right.
I can converse in Spanish with a couple of months. But to learn something at the same time, like a language, at the same time that you've got a job, it's sometimes difficult.
Yeah.
At an older age.
Yeah.
Younger age, kids are more receptive.
Yes.
That's what I found. So
okay.
the number one thing
Know the culture.
would be to understand the people, and two is be able to lead them and work with them, because I would have to say because they exchange the same feeling with you.
So what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
I mean, you can get some guy who thinks he's Superman,
Yeah.
and gets up and
Yep.
makes a speech, and many times, of course, he has some good ideas. But I think the ones that provide the greatest impression are the ones who personally can work with the people
Right.
on a pro-positive manner.
Right. And how can they do that? What how do they work with the people well? What do they need to do to be able to do that?
I don't know whether there are any. You have to be receptive. I think that's the third thing is that you have to be receptive. If you're not receptive, you're going to keep on talking, and they went to your class and they may pick up some ideas, but they don't get close to you.
Right.
They're often
Right.
at a distance.
At a distance, yeah. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, and I guess, we have the tatemae, the superficial understanding, and we have the honne, the actual understanding. They have that gap in Japan. And as a foreigner, sometimes it's hard to know, is what I'm getting just a tatemae, a superficial response here, or is this the actual honne, the real response? When I'm thinking about dealing with Japanese, because when you're the boss anywhere, subordinates are not always so open with the boss because they're a little bit protective. They're a bit worried about that. So particularly, I think, when you're dealing as a Japanese with a foreign boss, you're probably not likely to open up and be so direct with your boss. You're going to be a little bit cautious. You're going to be a little bit careful about what you say. So it's hard, I think, as a foreign boss to really connect with the Japanese who've got this little bit of a protective shell around them.
Very true.
How did you get around that?
Okay. Doing the same things they were doing.
Right.
Getting involved with them.
Right.
Not above them.
Right.
Or acting as a general
Right.
in front of them.
Yes.
You have to be with them.
Right. Right. Right.
If you are with them, they have more tendency to be with you.
Right. 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 Well, yes, I can see that. Thank you, David. This has been, a rare chance for me to do this interview with someone who's been working in Japan since, 1969, I think you said when you first came here. Was that right? 69? So,
69.
Yeah, and, someone who's been in Asia for way before that too, when you're in Thailand, etc. So, we I think, look at things today, and probably the things that you've talked about are still the core things, even despite the technology, despite, all of the progression in society and all of those things that are going on. I said at the core, the things you've talked about are probably still the core things for any leader in Japan. So thank you for sharing those with us. It's been very good.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Thank you.
And I hope that everything works out well for you and your organization.
Thank you.
But I spoke from my heart because
yes,
I believe it.
I thank you for that. Thank you, David.
Okay.
So this has been another episode of Japan's top business interviews. And we thank you for watching, and please join us for our next episode.